You're tuned in to another episode of The Coaching Lounge with your host, Rebecca Gordon, lead life coach at satellitelifecoaching.com. Listen to interviews with creative thinkers, motivational speakers, models of success, and key people of influence. Tune in, relax, engage, and transform your life now.
Thank you for tuning into another Coaching Lounge podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Gordon, and I'm so excited about today's show. As you know, I'm a life coach. I'm also a trainer and the lead life coach at satellitelifecoaching.com. My role involves helping people to make desired changes in their lives that may seem either daunting or unachievable. And in our very intimate and as a personal space and intentional coaching setting space, we explore how to make the impossible possible and how to micromanage the intricacies and the challenges of life that come along when we are involved with transformation and changing. Because it is that when we change, sometimes things around us don't change. So we have to make all sorts of adjustments internally and externally. Now, my guest today is Mbeke Waseme, who is very much involved with assisting and supporting and helping people to get to grips with major and what we can call actually a major life change, because she coaches people who have the urge to pursue a career overseas. And what Mbeke does is that she helps to prepare them for what is involved in pursuing their first contract. Mbeke Waseme is a perfect example of how to operate outside of the comfort zone and to do so with effortless calm and enjoying the experiences whilst being an explorer of the world. Mbeke was born in Lambeth, Brixton to Jamaican parents, and amongst her many qualifications, she has a master's degree, an ILM level 5 in coaching and mentoring, and a postgraduate certificate in leading educational practice. And not only that, Mbeke is a published author. We will talk about her books later on in the interview. She's a mother of 2 young adults, a trainer, a speaker, and overall educationalist. I'm sure that you really want to hear Mbeke's story and more about her work in the international arena. So let's get stuck into the interview. Greetings, Mbeke.
Greetings.
Thank you. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. And how are you doing?
Excellent. Very, very pleased to be speaking with you. So, so where are you now in the world?
I am in Asia
Right.
at this moment, specifically in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia.
Fantastic. Okay. What's the weather like there today?
It's how it is every day. It's hot. So
Okay.
I think it's 35 or 36 degrees. And
Wow.
this morning it was about 25. I went hiking this morning in a forest close to where I live.
Isn't that beautiful?
And yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good weather.
Great. Okay. So, Mbeke, travelling seems to be in your DNA. When did you first realise you had the travelling bug?
Oh, wow. I think as a primary school student, early secondary school, I was interested in places and people. And I thought at that time, the way to fulfill that interest career-wise was to become a hair hostess. So that was my target, my career target in secondary school. And I think that that goal was about being able to move around the world while I worked, but having the opportunity to be in different places. So almost being paid to fulfill my interests, which was really people, places, social, cultural, and historical. Everything that goes into the differences that we see when we travel.
Right, okay. So, but you didn't become an air hostess, I take it.
No, I didn't. And every time I'm on the plane and I look at the air hostesses, which sometimes don't look so happy. I'm glad that I didn't become one. But also, my mom is my mom passed away, but was a very traditional Jamaican woman. And when I said to her that's what I wanted to be, she was like, planes are crashing all the time. I don't know if that's the best career for you. And so as a young, innocent, very, very naive, very gullible young woman, I just said, oh, okay, I'll look at something else, because my mum's word was definitely law when I grew up. And if your mum said it's not a good idea, you did not pursue it. And so I did not pursue that.
Right, okay. I mean, as you say, you've got greater flexibility because you're at liberty to stay for however long, wherever you want to travel to.
Yes.
Yes. But it's also a good message, I think, for listeners, of parents of children who express certain aspirations, that actually, to nurture them and to explore the possibilities, because everything is possible. So, I'm really glad that you're actually doing what you want to do now and travelling in the sense that's fulfilling you right now. Okay, let's just go into the travelling and your experiences. So what was your first experience of working overseas, and what did you learn from that?
Okay, my first experience was a voluntary placement. I had thought about working overseas for some time and wasn't sure how I was going to make it real. Then as I started to explore the options, many of the areas that I looked at and the companies that came back to me were looking for a commitment of 1 year, 2 years, sometimes 3 years as a volunteer, which I didn't want to do at that time.
Yes.
So my first role was as part of a team supporting a project in Cameroon with a company called Health Projects Abroad, who no longer exist as far as I know, but they were at that time taking groups of optometrists out to rural Cameroon, English-speaking Cameroon, and carrying out eye tests, trying to support people who had simple eye diseases, and where possible distributing glasses. And it was an interesting project. It was first-hand experience of voluntary work, of being in Africa doing voluntary work, and it was also an opportunity to see some of the challenges that come with doing voluntary work overseas, because lots of people who have, I know, been on subsequent projects have, they've experienced similar questions about the projects, the longevity, sustainability. Yes. But in terms of what you learn about yourself, I personally learned that as a child of the 60s, Susan Jeffries' Feel Fear and Do It Anyway was alive and kicking. We had to trek sometimes for a day or two to get from one village to the next. And Cameroon was the first time where I had to walk over a suspended bridge, which was over a river. I mean, I've since crossed bridges, and sometimes underneath there's a forest, but this was over a river, and I had never crossed a suspended bridge. And this was a bridge that was not much more than rope, so it was very, very flimsy. And I was nervous to the point that my legs were shaking, and a lot of the other volunteers who had volunteered in other areas and were very confident with the bridge were running across and not wanting to shout out and say, "Stop that!" because I'm petrified. I think I sent you the picture of me with a very uncomfortable smile because I was scared. I was really scared. And a suspended bridge that runs for about half a mile is no easy task when you come from inner city London.
Yes.
So that was one of my fear moments, and I learned that sometimes you just have to feel the fear, but go on anyway. And another time, I have a friend who was stung from head to toe by disturbing a bee's nest in Dominica. And I've never been stung, but that story, when they relayed that story to me, it's always made me quite fearful of large groups of bees and wasps.
Yes.
And there were times where we were going through the forest, and all I could hear was the loud bzzz. And I'd like take a very deep breath and like, Mbeke, you just need to get past that. You just need to get past that. Come on, you just need to get past that. And I would eventually just, there was no other route, so I would have to go past that. And it's, it's an approach to life that from the first position overseas, it stayed with me, where there are lots of things that you are fearful of, and you just need to get past that. You just need to get past that and move on to the next stage. And I take that with me on lots and lots of occasions.
Right, okay. So you really have to, you sort of like balance yourself, center yourself, and, look a bit deeper within yourself as to how you're going to maneuver difficult, challenging situations. Okay. Yeah. So, what, I mean...
Can I just... Yes, can I just add there also, Rebecca, when you're part of a group, which I was... with my first volunteer experience, you also have a responsibility to other people. So while my fear feels incredibly large to me, I have a responsibility to the other members of the team. And so my fear is not the only thing I need to take into consideration. And so that was also what I learned. I may be feeling what I'm feeling and it's real for me, but that has to be balanced against the commitment to the project that I have made and to the group of people that I'm working with. So that also was a reminder for me on those occasions.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. It sounds as if you have masses and masses of stories, because I know you're an author. You have tons of stories for your book. Tell me about your book.
Which book would you like me to tell you about?
So tell me about your books. Thank you.
Okay, well, my first book, which came out in the 80s, was a selection of poems, which I wrote on leaving university, and they explored, it's called Exploring All of Me, and it's about to be republished. And the collection of poems explores racial identity in the UK, gender identity, issues of capitalism and inequality. It was published when I was 22, I think. And so that explores, those prominent issues that were around for me at the time that I was, giving a lot of attention to. And then my second book, Make the Changes, Feel the Joy, is a self-empowerment, self-development book. And it's particularly aimed at people who are not in the self-development world. Sometimes when you're in that world, you forget that a lot of people are not. A lot of people have not read or listened to or heard of the people that we assume everybody has. So, those of us who are in those worlds, in those circles, the names trip off our tongues, and a lot of our family and friends are sitting there thinking, who are these people? That's not part of their language. So the book is aimed at people who are thinking about how they move forward with their lives. And it's written in a way that if you are new to self-development and you're, you know that something is not right, but you're not quite sure how, it has in some simple exercises for you to assess where you are, where you want to get to, how you can do that. It talks about being able to breathe properly, because what a lot of us don't realize is that we don't breathe properly. And if we learn how to breathe again, then we can learn to make decisions that are more in harmony with our lives, with our spirits, and with where we want to go. And of course, it talks about living and working overseas and how you can approach that if it's an area that you're currently exploring.
Sounds like a fascinating read. And are you currently writing?
Yes, I'm currently writing a novel, and it's making me laugh and cry as I pull together some of my experiences of living overseas. And when I've in the writing process, so much of it is so funny. At the time, it was challenging. A lot of it was challenging, and now it's just hilarious material. I mean, there's very little I'm having to make up or embellish because it just is what it is. So I'm
Okay.
currently writing a novel.
Excellent. Okay. So going back to your experiences, I mean, many which you're putting into your novel, what
Yes.
are the benefits of working, learning, or living overseas for anyone that's listening now and who's
Yes.
thinking, actually, this might be a life path that I want to pursue? What
Yes.
benefits can they draw from that experience, and Becky?
Gosh, I wish I had a few people here with me to talk to you. I've just finished a series of articles that are posted on LinkedIn, and I quote from a few people that I've worked with and known over the years, and all of us, would agree that fundamentally working overseas gives you a different way of life, and for everybody, that means something different. But what we all agree on, what I know, is that having lived most of my life in the UK on that treadmill, in that rat race, there was always a feeling that there must be something more to life than this. Yeah. So getting up, getting ready, going to work, rushing to get the children to the nursery, to school, working all day, watching the time as you start thinking about beating the traffic to pick them up, to get home, to either heat up the dinner from yesterday or to cook something fresh or to get to the store to buy something, etc. You can do that for years. You can do that for your whole lifetime. And lots of people do. And people like myself who decide to say, no, this is not what we're going to do for the rest of our lives. We're looking for a different life experience, and some of us do it with our children. Some of us do it when our children have left home. Some of us do it when our children are babies. Some of us do it when we're retired officially. So, a friend of mine who was 60 did her first overseas role when she was 60 in Saudi, where she worked as a TESOL teacher and gained amazing experience and insight into that world and culture. And as a result, she's a different person, and that's what it does. It gives you first-hand experience of life, of cultures, of people, in a way that no book and no website and no YouTube and no chat room can give you. Actually sitting down, for me, sitting down in Accra, speaking to a man who was telling me about ackee, which is the traditional food of Jamaica, where my parents come from, and telling me about the history of ackee and how the people in the north eat it, the people in the south, in Accra, do not eat ackee, why they don't eat it, and why when ackee season comes in Accra, you see 5-10 trees of ackee, and the ackee is just on the floor and the chickens are eating it.
Wow, and it's so expensive.
And it's so expensive. And the people who you see climbing those trees are invariably Jamaicans who have relocated to Ghana and understand the value of that food. So, you learn about things that you won't find in the textbooks. And within that, you also learn about yourself. You learn about the things that are your very core. You learn about your values. You learn about what you know intrinsically is acceptable and what's not. You learn about your limitations. You learn about your strengths. You just learn a lot about yourself, and that's about empowering you as a wholesome human being in terms of the quality that it brings to your life, and of course, in turn, that quality that you bring to everybody that you know.
Yeah, so it is a great way to really dig deep and draw out the potential that sometimes we cannot manifest because of, living in the same, say city environment.
Yes.
When you're somewhere, I mean, you've actually traveled to many countries. It's Jamaica, Ghana and Malaysia. Those are
Jamaica, Ghana, Malaysia. Obviously, Cameroon was my first voluntary experience, and then within my other travels, I've been to Senegal and Gambia, and I've been to Vietnam. I've been to Thailand. been to South Africa just after apartheid ended. I've been to Kenya. So I've traveled to other places beyond where I'm working.
Right. So from each of those journeys, every one of them has given you another dimension to learning about yourself, about
Most
culture,
definitely.
etc., which is so enriching, isn't it? And it's
most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
So tell me, Becky, what are some considerations that you had to adjust to or bear in mind when immersed in the many different cultures that you've been immersed in?
That's a great question, and you literally learn a little bit more with each journey, with each trip that I make. So, okay, an example, in Ghana, I had a PA, my personal assistant, and one day she was doing something, and that was it. She was writing a letter to the parents, and I was saying to her, think about the relationship that we have with the parents in the school, and just use your common sense. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a phrase that I use often in the UK. Mm-hmm. Yeah? And she literally threw her pen down, stood up, threw her hands up in the air. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Common sense, common sense. And I was like, okay, obviously I've said something wrong here. And she had a hissy fit, as they would say in the UK, and I had to go and find someone and ask them to come and explain to me what was going on. And they said in Ghana, if you tell someone to use their common sense, it's like you're telling them they're mad.
Oh, okay.
As in needs to be institutionalized. And I was like, wow. Okay, right. I didn't know that. And there are other things that I did know and that I had been informed about, but I didn't know that. And there was, and I would never have found that out if I hadn't used that term to her, because it's not in any of the textbooks and all of the things that you need to know about Ghana and basic communication. Obviously, that's not mentioned. So there were a lot of things that you learn along the way. You have to learn what are the acceptable do's and don'ts about language and dress code. Those are big ones. Those are big ones. It's good to learn the do's and don'ts about food. So recently, this was a small gathering of people, and somebody had put a beef dish amongst the other food, and the Hindu people said, no, we don't eat beef. It's sacred in our culture, and if you're going to have beef present while we're here, it needs to be separate from the rest of the food. So again, I learned that, and I know that if I'm ever having a gathering at my home, if there's going to be beef, I don't eat meat, but if somebody was going to bring a beef dish along, I would keep that separate.
So it's about, when we travel overseas, to be respectful of the way that people are, to understand, their nuances, their cultural, intricacies, and to work
Most
within
definitely.
that.
Most definitely.
Yes. Because, sorry to interrupt, but it's like when I've been, my first trip on the African continent was to Gambia. And I went as a tour package, but I didn't want to be a tourist. I actually wanted to go into the local villages, to live amongst the people and like the people, and to get to be in that way rather than be separate. I'm from the West, and I'm still maintaining this Western way of that I'm used to. So I think it is important, and it's something to think of when you're going to live overseas. What do I need to be aware of? And this is what you do as a coach. You support people with this sort of understanding and awareness.
Most definitely. In terms of coaching people for overseas roles, it's about looking at the emotional and the practical journey that you take, because both go hand in hand when you're leaving everything that you have known up to that point. And even if you're going to a country that you think you're familiar with, so I went to work in Jamaica, and I worked for the UN, I worked for the educational bodies, and I worked for the University of the West Indies. And, I thought, I know Jamaica, my parents are Jamaican. It's totally different. It's totally different knowing a place generally as a holiday location, and going to work there. So, when my PA told me that she would be back soon, the Jamaican term is soon come, and was gone for 4 hours. And I was left very irate because, I had assumed that her soon come meant an hour because it was lunchtime. Right. So I assumed she was taking her lunch break. I had to just very quickly just reposition myself and have a whole different approach to her if I'm thinking about us having a long-term relationship. And when you work with somebody every day, that's what you're doing. You're investing in a long-term relationship. So, my ego was ready to jump up and start shouting and ask her, like, what is going on? And if this is how she's going to be, this is not going to work. But the reality is that I know that I personally would not respond to that kind of approach. And
it's
this is that I knew of her. I knew that she wouldn't either. But we did talk, and we did at that point set some working guidelines, and whatever had been for her okay up to that point, I just made clear what my expectations were, and that if she was going to be away for longer than what the usual break was, which was an hour, then it would be for me useful to know why, and it would need to be something exceptional as opposed to something that was normal, etc. Yeah. So it's about having that dialogue, but approaching it that would be different possibly to the UK.
Right. Yes. You've actually got to think about how you're going to interact and communicate with people when you're in this different setting because of the, cultural differences there.
Yes. Yeah, and also because of colonialism, there is sometimes a feeling from local people and the feeling is, who do you think you are coming here with your Western ways? Yeah. And often expats who are employed because of their Western ways. Yeah. Often they're employed because organizations want to improve standards or efficiency or policies in line with what's happening in the UK or the US or Australia in this region. So it's about balancing that in a way that means that, yes, you can bring some level of improvement, but also not negating that we are also learning from what's already in place, and understanding the cultural and religious nuances of a location will also assist in improving those things that we are often drafted in to do.
Okay, fantastic. So what we're going to do, Becky, I'm just going to ask one more question before we enter a very quick break. Okay. So the question is, with all this wealth of experience, can you relay one of the most challenging experiences you've had whilst living overseas?
Gosh, the most challenging, I think the challenge, one of the challenging roles that I've had was where my being an expat, being a woman, and being of Caribbean heritage was seen as, all of them was seen as my not being enough for them. If I had been a white woman with less qualifications, I would have been enough for them. But I wasn't enough because the way that racism plays out around the world, the credentials that I came to the role with was seen as not enough because I was a black woman of Caribbean descent from the UK and not a white woman. And that's a challenge because that became, that was quite a long-term challenge. So yes, I think for me that was definitely one. There's been lots of practical challenges, no water,
Yes,
no
yes.
light,
Yeah.
living in a house with cockroaches. In fact, I lived in Jamaica in a house with flying cockroaches,
Wow,
which is
okay.
just the whole other
Yeah, yeah.
experience. Right?
But I
But
mean, those practical things, it's sort of like, yes, the adjustments. I mean, we've all got to make those adjustments. But touching on what you've said there, a woman, an expat, and having, your experience in being from the Caribbean,
yes,
I've delivered a course, and in that course, doing my research, etc., it is that as a black woman, you go to work. People go to work and do their jobs, but as a black woman, you've got to think about, okay, well, how am I being perceived? We've got these
yes,
stereotypes of being seen as aggressive, or as you
yes,
say, not never good enough. And as a
yes,
black woman, you have to actually mentally register and think about all these things before you go and just do your job.
yes, yes.
And
And actually,
yes,
yeah, I was going to say, when people of color, BME people, go and work overseas, it's a very different experience to when white people go, without a doubt. And, that's a whole nother conversation, but it is
yes,
different. And, within my coaching, I will be able to walk people through that experience, wherever they're from,
yes.
because I'm able to do that. I'm able
Yeah,
to do
yeah,
that.
because it can be quite a shock, when you're, abroad. I mean, I remember when I went to Romania, not many black people in the part of Romania that I was in, which was Moldova, but actually I
Yes,
was very well embraced, and people
yes,
didn't bat an eyelid to me
yes,
being visibly different, and that was actually so lovely to experience. But
yes. That's fabulous.
when I've been to other places, it is like, okay, well, you're different, and you're really made to feel that you're different. So,
Yes,
it's yes. So let me just read
yes.
this quote here by Mark Jenkins, and we're going to have a quick break. And the quote is this:
Okay.
"Adventure is a path, real adventure, self-determined, self-motivated, often risky, forces you to have first-hand encounters with the world," as Mbeke
Yes,
Waseme has perfectly explained to us so far in this Coaching Lounge interview. But let's just
yes.
stop for a moment, absorb some of the excellent information we're hearing from Mbeke Waseme, and we'll be back on the other side after this short break.
We support your transformation. Stay tuned for more engaging discussion after this short break.
Usually, we struggle through life alone, with outdated beliefs and self-sabotaging actions that bring the same results. How different would it be if you had a personal success coach who helped you make the shift and create a plan for happiness? You will fearlessly align your values, achieve important goals, and reframe your perspective when you have coaching with me. Email Rebecca at info@satellitelifecoaching.com. Book your free discovery session and change your life.
My name is Rebecca Gordon, and I'm joined in today's edition of the Coaching Lounge by the international traveller Mbeke Waseme. And Mbeke has been to so many countries and is well fitted as a coach who supports people with making that transition from living where they are to learning, working or living overseas. And Becky, you've actually touched on something which is important. I mean, as a black woman, I share what you've said about, the challenges that we can face. But what would you say are some different things to consider for a man or woman who's thinking of, working overseas? What might you say single female travellers should bear in mind?
Okay. Gosh, single female travelers. Interesting question. And single female travelers have to obviously be mindful of their security, their presentation, so as not to offend, and also their language. I know that as a single female traveler of color, my experience again is very different to other single female travelers. And it really does depend where you are in the world. There are some consistent things that happen to all travelers. So if you are a expat in any part of the world or a tourist with an accent, your taxi driver will usually charge you 2 or 3 times the price of the journey because they can, and you just don't have the experience when you first arrive. So that's something that you gain eventually. As a traveler, if you're in a region where there are lots of abductions, you may decide that traveling out on your own, particularly in the evening, is not something that you want to do. Yeah. Your safety, your personal safety will be affected by where you're positioned. So the whole overseas working abroad, covers so many different locations. So some are very rural. You have NGOs and multinationals and schools and organizations in very rural areas. And so you will need to take on board different levels of safety and precaution when moving about to when you're in the big city. And big cities are generally the same. They're hustle and bustle, and there are lots of people, and there are pickpockets, and there are people that might harass you physically as you move about. And that's pretty consistent. That is pretty consistent with big city living. So, I've seen people who have left a big city like London or New York, and they go to a city like Accra. And okay, here's an example. A little bit of a diversion, but I've seen people who have gone to places like Accra, and they've met somebody who said to them, and they said, "Okay, I'd like to hire a car." And that person says, "Okay, I can organize that for you. If you just give me 500 USD, I'll organize that." And they hand over 500 USD to a nice, smiling somebody who goes off with their 500 USD, and they never see it again.
Right.
Yeah?
Okay, yeah.
And that might be land, that might be accommodation for friends who are coming to stay. And often when people tell me these stories, I say to them, would you hand over 500 USD to some stranger in your city? And they say, no. So why are you doing it here? And, it's a fantasy, a combination of fantasy and naivety that I'm in this really nice place and people are lovely and they seem so kind. And this nice man's going to organize my car hire or my hotel or something. And, those nice people see the people who are willing to hand over 500 USD coming from afar. And they happily take their money and think, oh, damn fool, go where they're going. So part of it is, yes, I think there are some rules for single women that need to be taken on board when people are working and living overseas. There are some things that you take from wherever you come from, and they really do apply in most parts of the world. And then there are specific rules that you will need to research for the location that you're in, which might not apply in every part of the world.
Right, okay. Because as you say, you can very much feel, okay, you're in holiday mode, it's so nice, it's relaxing, and the awareness slips a bit, doesn't it, the self-awareness?
Yes.
Okay. So would you say that there are some types of people who are not suited to working overseas?
Wow. I think there are some types of people who are open to the learning opportunities and fantastic experiences that overseas can bring to you. So, I celebrate all of the adventures and the experiences and the food and the culture. And, I go to somewhere like Sarawak in Malaysia, and I find the same beaded work that I found in South Africa when I bought those beads, exactly the same. I buy some earrings in Thailand, and they're exactly the same earrings that I bought in Ghana 25 years ago.
Okay.
Same style, same material, exactly the same. And so, for me, those are things that connect us as people. And I revel in that experience. I revel in the fact that we are more connected than we are not. Yeah,
That's a good statement, actually. Yes.
yeah. So for me, that's a great part of what I get from being overseas, and it continues when I go back to the UK, because those connections continue, and I see things through a new lens, and I move around, and things feel and look different because of my overseas experience. There are some people who work overseas and they have no intention of embracing any of the newness and the brilliance of the place that they're in, and they almost approach their role as old colonial masters did, which is that they have come to make the place and the people better, but they have nothing to learn from the place or the people. And so that arrogance goes with them, and I see it. I've seen it in Asia, I've seen it in Africa, I've seen it in the Caribbean. And again, racism works on so many different levels, and people embrace that and they allow that to happen, and it continues. But for me, in answer to your question, I think that group of people can do that stuff that they do anywhere, and really the world needs a lot less of that and a lot less of that approach, because the approach that says that what I have is better than yours because I come from the West, for me, undervalues and undermines that so much of what the West has starts in other parts of the world, whether that's medicine, ethnic clothing in H&M,
Yes.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely, yes. So just going back to your personal experience, I'm just interested to know, I've been away. When I went to Romania, the longest I was away for was 6 weeks. And it must have been in the second week, you're sort of like thinking normally you'd come to the end of your holiday, but it continued.
Yes.
And I must admit, I felt some homesickness. There were times I felt lonely. I had to, really make some readjustments about how I was living somewhere else. But what emotional adjustments does someone need to consider when deciding to be overseas for a long-term period?
Okay, emotionally, I think that people need to be really comfortable with themselves. One.
Yes.
They need to be really comfortable with themselves. They need to be comfortable with forming new relationships. When I was in Ghana, I remember an elder that I knew well in Ghana saying to me that, people who do what you do have to still have an adventurous spirit in them. And coupled with that, they need to have the curiosity of children in them. So that, when you're out a day, you may be out for a day and you're moving around your location. And for me, almost everything is fascinating, And as I said to you, I'm always making connections with the different places that I've been to, because there are so many connections and they're glaring at me. And that curiosity just it kind of keeps my energy level up. It motivates me, watching people's different appearances, watching the celebrations that are going on around me, learning what the different shrines mean as I'm walking around town. being able to go into a temple and just experience what that brings to me. All of those things are about me being comfortable in my own skin, being comfortable with reaching out to people, being comfortable that if people shun me because of their perception of who I am, that's not going to move me to tears, and that's not going to make me run back to the UK, because that's their problem. And for every one of them, there are 10, 20, 30 people who are just really nice. And who, I've sat on the train in Malaysia, and I've had women, men often don't speak to you in this region because of the religious challenges around men speaking to women who are not in their families. Right. So I accept that. I've had a lot of women on the train who have just said to me, "You're from England?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "I lived in England for 10 years. I know you're from England. Which part are you from?" and they just go down memory lane with me. I was there for 3 years doing my master's degree, or my husband was posted there for 10 years. Yeah. Oh, I loved Old Kent Road. Oh, I loved being in Chichester. And it's, it's fabulous. And these are 10, maybe 20-minute conversations on the train. And they give you such a boost. Yes. And, you go somewhere to eat, and people get to know you, and they ask you how your day's been.
It's nice. So
really, you have to, you have to really be comfortable with yourself. You have to be able to reach out to people and make new friends. In Kuala Lumpur, there are meetup groups, which is, there are formal groups where you can go out and meet people. So there are meetup groups for single people, there are meetup groups for photographers, there are meetup groups for writers, there are meetup groups for entrepreneurs online, there are meetup groups for entrepreneurs offline, there are meetup groups for healthy people, for vegans, for vegetarians. The meetup groups in KL, you could do something every day of the week if you want to do it under those formal structures. So that's also a way to meet new people that already have an interest that you have. And then there are, obviously people that you meet at work. I prefer to have people outside of work, because I find that where my work colleagues are also my social colleagues, it all becomes a little bit too incestuous.
Yes.
So I actually like to have a demarcation line, but some people are really happy with having friends from work that they go out with in the evening as well. And sometimes that's your first group of friends, the people that you work with, and then you may meet new people as the time goes on. Yeah. But fundamentally, you've got to be comfortable with yourself. Right. Fundamentally, you've got to know how to motivate yourself, because there are days where, when you were in Romania, you said that, you had those days where you missed home. Of course you miss home. You cannot spend all of your life or most of your life in one location and not miss it. Yeah, you cannot spend most of your life with your family and not miss it. You cannot be away from your children and not miss them. Yeah, those are all fundamentals. They are who you are. And, in Malaysia, the technology is great. So I can be in contact with people at any time. I can do a Skype conversation, a WhatsApp conversation, FaceTime, etc. In Ghana, the electricity was off 5 hours a day. There were days when I wasn't able to get in contact with people. And if we did make contact, the reception was poor. And that was a real challenge, particularly in the first couple of weeks, when you just want to talk to somebody that you know.
Yes.
So you need to be able to say, okay, I'm going to, personally, I do yoga, and I've been doing yoga since I was 15. And yoga and I say to people, it saved my life, in that those moments where somebody might have turned to alcohol. I don't drink, but if I was a drinker, there were moments that I would have turned to drink. And if I was a smoker, there was moments that I would have turned to smoking, because I felt very low. And, when I listen to, a lot of people, including, Les Brown and others, and when you are low, you can either go for negative, which is the alcohol or the smoking, Or you can go for positive. You can go for a long walk and just kind of clear your lungs and get a new perspective. Or you can do some yoga and just kind of get yourself in alignment with the place you want to be in. And that will keep you going. And it will make you healthy and fitter.
Sounds like an excellent experience. Despite some of the challenges, there are some ways that we can actually just overcome and just remember, what it's all about and just live in the moment. Just going back to Romania, one of the great things I remember was sitting with a group of friends. I've got many friends from Romania as a result of my travels.
Yes.
But the in-depth quality conversations, which were really, really nice, and in a way, I have felt that in the UK, I've not actually really been able, because it's a fast world here. You've got the mobile phones and all the technology, but in that setting, you just sit for hours, just talk, get really deep into conversations. I'm sure you've experienced very, very much of the same. I have, and then for me, it's one of the values that you gain from being away from the big cities that you're born in. I'm living in the city. I live in a city in Accra, but neither of them were anywhere near as fast as the UK. And so people were more into quality experiences as well. So most of the people that I met in the last, 5-6 years in Jamaica as well, let's meet up for lunch on Sunday. Yeah? People want to meet up for lunch. They want to see you face to face and have a conversation and combine that with a meal. And they don't want to develop the relationship with you on WhatsApp or whatever other social media whatever people are using. And it just brings back a quality of experience to your life that I think is missing for most people in the city. It's going too fast and it's not healthy. Most of the experiences are not healthy because as human social beings, we get a lot of quality which also affects us physically. So physiologically, our bodies and minds are better for conversations and face-to-face. I agree.
And actually the mobile and the gadgets cause a lot of stress to people in their need to keep up and to respond all the time and to be seen, to be present.
Absolutely.
In all of these areas.
Yeah, it's like being a slave, isn't it?
Yes, most definitely. So, that your experience in Romania is one that I have had many times over.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is before we're actually going to take a break at this moment, and Becky, and then when I come back, we're going to actually go through some quick fire questions that I'm going to ask you, as well as giving some insight on how to be an explorer of the world. Okay. So stay tuned. We shall be back very soon.
You're tuned in to the Coaching Lounge podcast with Rebecca Gordon. Find out more about us by visiting satellitelifecoaching.com.
Think big for a moment. If you could create your best life, how would this look? What if, in just 30 minutes, you had a plan of action to get closer to your dream? Make the impossible possible and claim your free session today. Visit www.satellitelifecoaching.com now.
Thank you for tuning in to the Coaching Lounge. I am Rebecca Gordon. I'm the coach at Satellite Life Coaching, and I'm joined by Mbeke Waseme. And Mbeke, your organisation is called Global Consultants, is that correct?
Global Change Consultants is my email address.
Okay.
I'm about to register my company, but I need to just check whether the name is still available.
Right, I see, yes. Yeah. Okay, so that's your email, Global Change Consultants. We'll give that fully towards the end, okay?
Okay, great.
But what I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to share 13 great insights by the author Kerry Smith. and she's the author of How to Be an Explorer of the World. When I share these 13, and Becky, can you just make a note of the numbers of 2 of them that really resonate with you, and we can explore that, okay?
All right, great.
So,
let me get my pen.
Fantastic, okay. So here's How to Be an Explorer of the World. Number 1, always be looking. Notice the ground beneath your feet.
Okay.
Number 2, consider everything alive and animate.
Okay.
Number 3, everything is interesting. Look closer. Number 4, alter your course often. Number 5, observe for long durations and short ones. Number 6, notice the stories going on around you. Number 7, notice patterns, make connections. Number 8, document your findings, field notes, in a variety of ways. Number 9, incorporate indeterminacy. Number 10, observe movement. Number 11, create a personal dialogue with your environment. Talk to it. Number 12, trace things back to their origins. And finally, number 13, use all of the senses in your investigations. Great insights there from Kerry Smith.
Definitely.
Which 2 resonate with you and Becky?
A lot of them do, but since you've only asked me to select 2, I'm going to say number 7, notice patterns, make connections. And that one resonates for some of the reasons that I've already said. And it immediately took me to last week's Sunday, where I'd been hiking, and I was walking back to my apartment block, and there was a family on a moped, and often on mopeds here you'll see one parent, 2, 3, sometimes 4 children. And this was a father with 2 children, and they were standing near the forest that I'd just been hiking in and making that sound. And families of monkeys started to come out of the forest. 5, 10, 15 monkeys, and they were feeding them bananas. And the children were very excited, and the monkeys were, coming out more and more because they'd heard that the feeding time was going on. And as they moved off on their bike, the children were waving back and going, "Bye-bye, monkey, bye-bye, monkey." And I just stood there and I thought about all of those times that I'd gone to the park with my own children to feed the ducks.
Okay.
And how, in different parts of the world, how families and nature connect. And Sunday morning is that time. It's that time when we're not rushing and we're not getting homework done. We're not doing housework. And if the sun's out, Sunday morning is always a great time to do things like that. And for me, that was another experience of seeing how families do quality time.
Yeah, as you said before, it's like wherever we are in the world, we're actually more the same than we are different.
Most definitely.
Yeah, great. And what was the second one that resonated with you?
Gosh, number 8, document your findings. I'm starting, people have been saying to me for a while, you must blog. And I'm like, I will. And I'm now starting to blog more, and I'm writing this novel, and I've always been, I'm a trained photographer. I used to teach photography, and I constantly take photographs. And for the people who don't get to move around the world, this is a way that they can see what my experience has been, and they may not, but they might suggest to their niece or their nephew or their grandchildren or their own children, speak to this woman, have a look at what she's doing. This might be of interest to you. So, documenting my findings, documenting my story in the way that Well, no, in I think in a much wider way than many of our writers have done in the past, because social media, if used correctly, now offers us opportunities to share so many different elements of our stories, storyboard and recordings and videos that were not always there. So having an opportunity to not just document but to also share, for me is so important, and so important because so many people think that they're not sure if they can do this. And as a second generation young woman that went to a local comprehensive school, I want to remind people that this experience is out there for anybody who wants to pursue it.
Yes. And I read your last blog, and it was really, really good because it was, I looked at the others, but they're practical. So from the blog, it's not just your experience, but actually practical things that people need to consider. And when I read it, I thought, actually, yes, it's great for if you're going to live and work overseas, but even if you're thinking of going on holiday, to get the very best from the experience, reading your blogs and having coaching with you, I think will enable someone to really get the best that they can.
Thank you.
Yeah, even from a short-term visit. So, please look out and link up with Mbeke on LinkedIn. But Mbeke, travelling is very much about self-exploration. You've described that excellently in the interview. What have you learned about yourself as a result of your experiences? I know there have been many learnings, but just, share, one profound, perhaps, learning.
People are people. And that's come home to me on a number of occasions, and each time I move around the world it just becomes strengthened. People are people, and the similarities that we have are always greater and much more empowering than the differences.
Excellent. Okay. And what's next for you?
Wow. Absolutely anything is possible.
Okay.
Absolutely anything is possible.
Great answer.
If I start talking about this project and that project, and anything's possible. I had a conversation today that's just made my mind shift into another direction. I'm like, wow, I hadn't thought of that. Okay,
excellent.
Oh yes, all right. So other things are going to be happening in the near future that if you had asked me that question 4 hours ago, I wasn't even thinking in that way.
But that's one of the things about being overseas. I remember sitting, on the beach in Tanzania and just flowing with so much creative juices about, possibilities. When we take ourselves out of the confines of the everyday normality into, the stretch zone, then actually we're tapping into a lot of creativity that sometimes doesn't get the chance to be expressed, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Rebecca, there is something very important about being close to nature. And in some cities, you're closer to nature than in others. So it's interesting because in KL, they have managed to build apartment blocks and malls and shopping, and everywhere I turn, there are trees and forests. And the design of the city seems to have been to make sure that the life that comes from being around green spaces remains. Yeah. Okay. So KL is full up of green spaces and water features everywhere you go. So you could go to the most expensive Minara, whatever, and as you enter, there'll be water features, which within Chinese culture and Feng Shui is an important element of just bringing a gentleness to the environment. And there are green spaces. There are green spaces everywhere. There are trees and bushes and forests. And so you're never far from what nature brings with its own creative juices. And so
beautiful.
Yeah, so you don't get lost in the concrete world in the way that you do in somewhere like London City, where decisions have been made to completely remove all of those things that help us to thrive.
And this is the thing, you see. I mean, really, the world is ours, isn't it?
Yes.
It's ours to experience. And I mean, your experience is that actually we need to get out there and experience the world in its natural beauty. Yes.
Most definitely. And you can, people, just a small point, people often say, I can't afford to do this, I can't afford to do that. If you are a qualified, experienced professional, and I'm going to stress that because people in the UK often forget how experienced and how qualified they are. And those qualifications and that experience is very much valued overseas. And that value often comes with a comfortable package for living and being, and a lifestyle that will enhance creativity and also opens up other opportunities for people who are thinking about doing business overseas, looking at trading. I mean, I've met people over the years who have, from their overseas role, developed other networks which have fed into other areas of their life, because in the 21st century, most people do more than one thing.
There can be, I'm just thinking about what you've said, so many possibilities by making that move. Yet,
Definitely.
the limitation might be the fear of thinking about what's involved in making the move.
Yes.
But actually, that's where you come in.
That's exactly where I come in.
Can you share your contact details, please, and Becky?
Okay, so in terms of moving forward, I can be contacted via Skype, and my Skype name is Waseme, Waseme, and it comes up as my location is London, which is where my home is. So I can be contacted via Skype. I can be contacted via email at globalchangeconsultants@gmail.com. And as relationships develop, I will share a contact number. But at this point, those two are the best avenues for getting in touch with me.
And just before we go to the quickfire questions, I must ask this question, and you've touched on it in the previous question. So in terms of going to live somewhere else, or to work, I should say, apart from some of the usual, looking in the on the internet, etc., what are some other creative ways that people can get access to some opportunities that exist overseas?
Okay, I mean, if we're looking at paid employment, word of mouth is always still a very good way of contacting people that you know who are already overseas. Mm-hmm. There are forums on LinkedIn, there are forums on Twitter, and there are other social media groups which are specifically aimed at people who want to live and work overseas, and expat groups. There are also opportunities, if people have the time and finances available, then I always recommend traveling to a place that you're thinking of working in. You can either look at, again, paid employment, but if you're an entrepreneur, if you travel to a location, you can often see where there are gaps in the market where you can provide a service or a resource that people need, and you may well be able to supply it at a cost that means that you are benefiting as well as local people.
And if somebody wanted to, let's talk about Ghana, because I have been to Ghana on a few occasions and know people have relocated there. So if somebody's thinking, actually, I have a business idea or service and I would like to know how to make a business of it over there, do you know people who support people through that business?
I do know. I do know some people who are involved in trade fairs.
Okay.
So what they do is they actually organise groups of people to visit Ghana, visit Nigeria, visit Kenya, and have a look at the opportunities which are there. And, on the back of Forbes saying a few years ago, if you're not doing business in Africa, why not? Due to the fact that the numbers in Nigeria and Ghana alone mean that with the right contacts and efficient processes, you could do very well selling a service or a product in either one of those markets.
Okay.
But yeah, I do have some contacts. And as I said, I also encourage people where they can to travel. What the trade fairs do is they give you the facts. And so things like Ghana, for instance, if you go in as a foreigner, quote unquote, and you want to set up a business, there is a cost of approximately 30,000 USD. If you are married to a Ghanaian, it's a lot less. It may be free, but don't quote me on that. And if you partner with a Ghanaian, it's definitely a lot less. I think it might be something like 10,000 Ghana cedis.
Okay.
So, those are the kind of things that people need to take into account when they're looking at doing business overseas.
Okay, interesting. So, Becky, are you ready for the quickfire questions?
I am ready.
Okay. So, what book are you reading, or what is the last book you've read?
Okay, so the book I'm reading at the moment is one of Seth Godin's, Gems, Small is the New Big, which is a great business book, has lots of ideas in, lots of his sharing. And it's a book that I pick up in between doing all the other things that I'm doing. And I like his style, and I like his informality in getting across the message that he wants to get to people so they can improve their business and business practice.
Okay, tell me one thing that you picked up from the book in the last reading.
Main one is if everyone's doing one thing, do it differently.
Okay, excellent. Second question, which famous person, dead or alive, would you like to have dinner with?
Maya Angelou.
Okay, and what would you like to ask her? What important question would you ask her?
I'd ask her how she navigated her life successfully, having gone through the traumatic experiences that she went through and the high points of her life, the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, living and working in Africa. There were so many things about her life that I've read, her as a writer, as a poet, as a performer. There's so many elements of her life that I find amazingly interesting. And I would want to find out how she navigated all of that to successfully, come to her 80s and still be sharing gems and supporting others up until she passed away.
Yeah, she's left a tremendous legacy. Okay.
Definitely.
And question number 3, what is your life motto, Becky?
Your health is your wealth.
Absolutely true. Okay. So, Becky, it's been an amazing interview.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I've enjoyed every moment of it.
Likewise. And just to remind our listeners here that your Skype contact is Waseme, Mwaseme. I mean, certainly your links will be on this recording here. And you can be contacted through globalchangeconsultants@gmail.com. And any last words, Becky?
Go for it. If you're sitting at home right now listening to this and you've wondered whether or not you're the right person, you're the right age, you're the right color, you have enough experience, go for the first steps. I offer a 30-minute free coaching session. Let's have that session, and then let's have a look at how we move you from where you are to being overseas, if that's what you really want.
Excellent. Something I would certainly recommend that anyone who's listening and has got this travel bug and is thinking, okay, how can I make this happen? And Mbeke Waseme is the go-to coach to support you with living and working overseas. And Mbeke Waseme, thank you very much for joining me today.
Rebecca, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity as well. And I wish you all the best with your future programs and with your own coaching.
Thank you so much, Mbeke.
Thank you for tuning into the Coaching Lounge. Join us next time for more insightful interviews with inspiring guests. You can hear previous shows on SoundCloud by searching for Satellite Life Coaching. We're always interested to hear your feedback and topic suggestions, so don't hesitate to email us on info@satellitelifecoaching.com.